Okay, welcome. Today I have with me Joe Scapoletti. My name is Mark Scapoletti. I'll be doing some interviewing, and we're going to try to pick his brain on some random topics that I came up with that he is unaware of, so he doesn't really have any clue of what I'm going to ask him. I kind of took it light on him today because and gave him some questions that I thought he might be able to readily answer, but we'll see what happens.
Jeez.
Okay, so hopefully, I don't know. We don't really know the format of this podcast, but we're just gonna roll with it and see how long we can do.
Sounds.
And if you could, sir.
Yes, sir.
Because the camera's shaking when you do that. Could you put your?
I feel like I'm back at St. James Parochial School. Put your hands on the desk and you get the ruler.
I was gonna whip you with a ruler. Okay. So I just want to open up, and the first question. I have a series of questions here. 5 questions.
5 questions.
5 questions that we can expand on as much as we want. But so the first one is, from a clinical point of view, what are your brief thoughts on the mind-body connection, or as you have studied, is it psychoimmunology?
Yes.
Is that the word?
Yes,
Psychoneuroimmunology.
Psychoneuroimmunology, the mind-body connection and its effect on the immune system.
I knew I missed some kind of word there.
Yeah. Pretty big word.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on how that connects? Like, when we think of the mind-body connection, obviously everybody's not versed in psychoneuroimmunology as a whole, but when you think about that and the mind-body connection, briefly, like, what are your thoughts on it as a whole?
Well, first let me explain to you how I got into it, if I may. And that is, I had a squirrel problem at my house one time, and I thought, I don't want to kill them or shoot them or anything, so I thought I'd get a cage. So I got a cage. I put some peanut butter in there, trapped them in the cage. And when I saw him in the cage, he was panicking, trying to get out of the cage. And I thought to myself, if this little yo-yo just understood to take your little paw and stick it under the door and pick it up, you could just go right out of the cage. And I thought to myself at that time, I was probably maybe 25, 30 years old. I thought to myself, well, what don't we know? How dumb are we as the squirrels are, trying to escape our pain, our illness, or anything that besieges us? Is there a way that we can tap into our own mind to alleviate these issues? So I studied that. Not to mention that my uncle was a strong advocate of the power of the mind. He was big into Earl Nightingale and salespeople who said, if you want to do it, you can do it. So there was strength to that, and successful people were implementing these strategies. But how do we do that in mental health, or how do we do it in physical health? So then I studied, and then I went to college for the study of psychoneuroimmunology, and I found out that at this point, the only way that I know how to tap into our own power of our mind is through hypnosis. That puts us, if you don't know what hypnosis is.
If I can interrupt, just like that would be something I ask in a few minutes here. Yeah, and I know, like, what you're saying is, like, people understand the power of positivity, of positive thinking, but that's kind of usually where it ends for a lot of people. They really kind of know it exists, and they kind of implement it in their own little way. But obviously, you've kind of studied into it a little bit more. So that's why I wanted to kind of get is like where you were at with it and your thoughts on it, and you kind of expanded on it, so to speak. Yeah,
there's no question that we have within our own mind the power to heal, the power to alleviate pain, the power to change our behaviors. Hypnosis over years have implemented their discipline in quitting smoking, losing weight, etc. But I wanted to take it, as you say, a step further,
right,
where we can actually go deeper into the healing process for things that are much more obtrusive to most individuals, such as sickness, mental illness, etc., those kinds of things. And so I used that and some mental exercises with the hypnosis that did some astonishing things. Like, for an example, I had one 19-year-old cancer patient who unfortunately has since passed, but when he was at 19 and had cancer, we were able to reduce his morphine intake by 50% by using these strategies. That's just one of many, many examples of the kinds of things that can be done with the power of our own mind. So that's an issue of pain reduction. There are many other ways. I recall one time, this almost sounds like a faith healer, but I was teaching a class and I asked somebody who had a headache, and I went in their ear and I whispered in their ear and got them to relax for 2 seconds. The headache was gone. They were standing there astounded. And all I could think of at that time was Jesus Christ, who was the great healer, who implemented these strategies, had enough knowledge of the human mind to tap into their pharmacy via his suggestion, via whatever mechanism he used. And I have no idea. Nobody spoke about it. But in my case, I used these strategies and was able to alleviate a lot of pain. And I had one individual who was fearful of the tumor they had, and we concentrated on dissolving the tumor via the power of their mind, and the tumor was no longer on the x-rays.
Well, yeah, you're way ahead of me here, because
Sorry.
No, that's good, because it means we're on the same thought process, or we're in the same train of thought.
Right.
Well, the next two questions I was going to ask, but maybe now that since you're kind of alluding to it already, is I'll just combine them into one. The next one would be, what do you believe is the spiritual component to this in terms of manifestation, or if you talk about law of attraction, which you referred to in that little thing, in your little what you were just saying basically. And then the other one was knowing both sides of the story, meaning knowing both the spiritual side of it, because you just mentioned like Jesus. I think what you're referring to, like even Reiki healing, like you didn't know how he did it. A lot of Reiki healers believe that's what he was doing. But knowing kind of, I shouldn't say both sides because it's not both, but knowing a couple sides of the story, what are pragmatic ways that people can harness that ability? That was the next couple questions. So, but you're already kind of alluding to it. So.
Well, I mean, I suppose.
So let's go with the first one.
Well, I suppose that if an individual did enough study, they could do it on their own. There is self-hypnosis, and there are the Silva method of cancer reduction, et cetera, that they use. So there are people studying this in this field. So if you look hard enough and far enough, you'll certainly find a way to do it yourself. I find that it's so much easier if you have somebody guiding you through it. And that's what I did, is I guided them through these meditations and thoughts and thinkings. And if you'd like, I can give you an example.
Do you think that's just part of our society, like people it kind of is, it's part of the reason why people have a hard time healing themselves, because they simply don't believe, or they're not putting that intent out, or the belief or the energy of belief into it. So you kind of need some poking and prodding from someone else.
That's a good point.
Self-healing,
that's a good point. If you go to a doctor, you're going to listen to him because you believe that person has credentials. And I suppose if you came to me and I started throwing this stuff at you, you'd say, well, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's had good success with it. I ought to go with it. But, sometimes we're stubborn, and sometimes we don't walk where we're uncomfortable. But in this case, that's why if you have a qualified individual who studies these things and works with people on these things and had success with these approaches, then you would be best off, I believe,
right,
in that circumstance.
Yeah, because in rare cases you'll hear about like someone who's paralyzed and they literally willed themselves to walk again.
Absolutely.
Or a cancer patient who willed themselves to do it. Those are rare. That's what I'm saying. They're rare that somebody actually kind of realizes the potential of it and can drive it by themselves. But I feel like we live in a society where people they put a lot of faith in something else. Like we could probably go on more about this, but like a higher power.
Right.
Right. Like Jesus was saying. I mean, again, to get into a spiritual thing, that was my next thing. I was going to ask you, how he said that he was here to empower us and understand that we are part of that. We can do it ourselves and heal ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To be Christ-like is to be healers. And we all have abilities and talents that we've been given. And mine happened to be, I was lucky enough to be able to use healing as my talent, or counseling and healing together. I was able to, thank God, help some people. And so
And
you don't. This is. I will tell you too that I don't think you necessarily have to have the spiritual aspect to succeed at doing this. What I'm saying is this is actually a science. This isn't something out of the blue. This is an actual science, so that if an individual without AA uses the spiritual aspect of healing from alcoholism, and other groups use spirituality. I think that is a very important tool, but not the only tool, and not necessarily a necessary tool. But you're trying to fix a pipe under your sink, and you have a wrench and only one wrench. You're going to fix the sink at some point. However, if you have a wrench, a monkey wrench, and you have a basin wrench and a different kind of tightening and implement, you will have a better success of finishing it and finishing it quicker.
Well, that's why I want to ask you, because do you think that there's an advantage to having a convergence of the spiritual side and the pragmatic scientific side, whereas most people might be kind of weighted to one side, either pure faith, like or pure just logical science, saying, oh, this is it.
Yeah,
So
the placebo effect is big in mental health and in physical health. People say, I feel terrible. The doctor says, take this. He takes a sugar pill, and the guy feels fantastic. The power of the mind, there's a clear example of it. So you want to implement, certainly I'm not negating the medical field at all. I'm simply stating as an adjunct to, in cooperation with the whole healing process, between the chemicals and the power of your own mind. In some cases, just the power of your own mind, and in some cases, just the power of the medicine. However, I've seen a number of people that just gave up on the medicines, don't want to take the medicines because the way they feel. Well, this is an alternative perhaps to that. Like, for example, the cancer patient I was referring to, 50% of the morphine, he felt like he was doped all the time. But when we got him down to 50%, he couldn't wait to come to his next session with me because he felt fine with the amount of morphine he was getting. He wasn't stupefied, and yet he still can reduce the pain. So there's an adjunct to it.
Much like, obviously I'm not a psychologist, but I know that they try to use medication in conjunction with like behavioral therapy to kind of meet the person in the middle instead of just one side of the coin.
Yeah, and I've also had the converse to that. While you're correct, I'm not negating what you said, but I will tell you I've had the converse to that. I specialized in an anxiety disorder. Someone will come in with extreme anxiety, and I would say to them, you're not in a place or a point where we're going to be able to help you here. I will call your doctor and talk to him with your permission and suggest a benzodiazepine, for an example, to help calm you down so that we can use the cognitive behavioral approach along with. And between the two, then we were able to get over the anxiety disorders many times very quickly because it was mostly situational. It wasn't an underlying necessarily an underlying anxiety genetic disorder. It was more of a situational situation.
You had to get it in motion first.
We got in motion first. Then when we put the cherry on top, when we would enter into the spiritual realm, in order to use that, like in the Bible, for an example, if you use the Bible, while there are many sacred writings, not just the Bible, whether they be in Islam or Judaism or any of the Eastern religions, but we used. I lost my train of thought. Mark, help me. What were we talking about? Isn't that something? Don't get old, audience. Don't get old.
Well, yeah, I was going to say you're ahead of me in the questioning, because my next question was, does this relate to the placebo effect, and what are your experiences and how well this works? So
I answered that, I think, in the respect that it's very powerful. Placebo effect has scientifically been proven to aid in many a healing situation. So yes.
Right. And that's strictly power of the mind.
Power of the mind, strictly and solely.
There's nothing chemically happening.
There's nothing going on. The chemically happening is going on, but it's induced by you instead of an outside agent.
Right. So I would say to someone like, like one of my other things was like how can somebody, what are some small things that people can do, like I said, pragmatically, that can kind of help them at least realize the potential of it, because I think there's very few people that actually believe in this. You know what I'm saying? Like there's the kind of the snarky side of, oh, just think positive and all my thoughts, all my problems will go away.
Yeah.
And then they automatically put themselves like behind the eight ball there.
Well, I think the reason is, and you make a good point, because many people will try these things, but not be in a proper state of mind for them to work. So if you're hyper panicking, you're losing your eyesight, hypothetically, you have macular degeneration, and I had this case one time with an individual, and they're losing their eyesight. So they're panicking. They're going to all the churches looking for faith healers. They're going to all the doctors. They're driving all over the country trying to figure out how to resolve this. And when we got together, and since that time, 30 years ago, there's been no degeneration of the eye. The perpetrator, macular degeneration, it's still there, but no longer takes his sight away. So now is that part of the placebo? Sure, but it's also part of the steps that we took, and he was willing to take. But let me tell you, when he's got all this stuff going on in his mind, he can't do it by himself. It's like the squirrel running around in the cage, trying to figure out how to get out. He can't do it. When he's guided, if I could say to the squirrel, and he could understand me, I'd say, take your little paw and stick it in and lift it up and go ahead and go. Then he knows how to do it and this path to do it. But he has to be he has to stop panicking, get in a state of mind of calm in order to attack it. So I think, to answer your question, yes, people don't find the benefit of it because they're in a state of panic and they can't tap into the pharmacy within their brain. They need it to be guided.
Right, not to mention the culture we've created that, like I said, people believe that, they're going to believe like, oh, this isn't something that I can just will away. And we're in a society where we actually think that and we accept that.
Well, we
accept that it's only going to be remedied by, science. People are like, oh, it's all hocus pocus. Like, you got to believe in science.
Well, yeah.
So that was what I was going to ask you. Is like, how far do you believe? Where do you think the cutoff point?
Okay.
I said between like being pragmatic and believing in both sides, because I do believe in the balance of it. But like,
I understand.
How powerful do you really think this can be? From that anecdote, so to speak, you believe it could be like wholeheartedly just be the only thing.
Okay,
Maybe
let me give you a response to that. My belief is 1/3 of all illness is physical, 1/3 of all illness is mental, and 1/3 of all illness is mental and physical. That means that 2/3 of illness can benefit by using your mind, the power of your mind, to heal. Yes, there are strictly physical ailments. Yes, there are strictly mental. But by using the studies that I'm talking about and the process and procedure that I refer to, then we can address the 2/3 that involve your mind. So 2/3, if that answers your question, that's the cutoff. 2/3 of illness it have the physical and mental component.
Right, it does answer the question, but let me get back to that. Like, what small steps, and you don't have to list many, you can even just list one, that someone can incorporate into their daily life in order to start trying to harness this mind-body connection. Little things. It doesn't have to be like they have to take a course on it or meditate for 2 hours. What would be something, like if you were to tell someone listening to this right now, just to start off, do this small little exercise and see if it works, and they can kind of experiment with like manifestation and how the body's going to react to certain thought processes.
Yes. Well, hopefully we'll get into my wholeness paradigm theory, which talks about love and fear, which is on every sacred writing to boot, and I'll quote those sacred writings. I will give them where you'll find them. But I would say the only thing a person has to do is read Matthew chapter 12. That's all they have to do. If you're not sure, if you're leery, if you think there's another wacko on YouTube try to shove something down my throat. By the way, we're not making any money on this, so I don't know what our goal would be other than to help people develop their own healing process. But if you go to chapter 12, and I think a key verse in all of that, based on your question, would be something, and I'm paraphrasing, something to the effect that the birds of the air don't sow, and the crops in the fields don't have clothing, yet their Almighty God clothes them, feeds them, and cares for them. Those are the least of the creatures in the kingdom of heaven, while humans and their mind are the closest to God. What more God will do for you if you just ask? And it's said there, I don't think it's in Matthew, but it's in there, that if you go to your father asking for bread, will he give you a stone? No, he won't. He'll give you the bread. So if you go to your father and then ask him, then it'll be given to you. There's no question about that in my mind. So fear is the worst component of an individual's life.
That's like the main idea, which also trickles down to like doubt, uncertainty.
Yeah, I'm going to go through
lack.
Yep. Yeah. Yes, exactly. If we go through and I will show you a map, and what happens when you fear versus what happens when you love, because those are the only two emotions, and that you'll find that not only in sacred scriptures, but you'll find that in the Course of Miracles. You'll find that in Hindu thought. You'll find that everywhere. So
we can save that. Yeah,
we'll save that. If people like our podcast and the direction we're going, we're going to give that to them next. Look forward to it.
Well, we can wrap up here. It's been about 20. So I would say it's good that you have balance. I know that in a time like this where we're at the poles, we're so polar. Hopefully, it's refreshing that someone would take a middle view that can look at a number of perspectives, spiritual perspectives, believe in science, believe in the power of the mind, and all these things that can holistically help you achieve where you want to go.
Mary Baker Eddy, Science and Health, she wrote, who is the founder of the Christian Science movement, not Scientology, Christian Science movement. Believes what I'm telling you is very influential in this discussion, very, very, very fundamental in my reading to get me started in this area about this very fact about life and how Jesus was the grand healer, the grand physician, because he understood these principles. And I think these are the principles she and he were implementing in order for healing.
Sure, and it's cool that she's trying to empower people and tell them they could have the same power to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully people can open their eyes to that and kind of
well, if you're going to be Christ-like, then heal yourself.
Yeah, that's good.
So, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, well, thanks for answering the questions. This was our first one, so we'll do it again.
Yeah, well, let's upload this boy and see what happens.
And maybe I'll ask some questions that you're not so far ahead of.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay. All right, thanks.